All right, and it looks like we are live.
All right.
All right. So I have with me today Corky Farmer, and he is a 54-year-old Air Force veteran, father of five, and a grandfather whose path to writing was anything but traditional. Looks like Corky's English teacher even had to give him extra points just to make sure he graduated high school. And he was eager to get out into the world and work with his hands, but he ended up in his military service, which taught him that even hands on work requires a solid skill as a writer. And later, while pursuing an IT degree, he discovered that writing was actually a very powerful form of expression. In 2013, Corky ventured into storytelling with The Elko Run, which is a World War II novella. And that experience was very rewarding, and it set him, and while he set writing aside to focus on advancing his career and being present for his children during their formative years, he did pick it back up in late 2001, returning to his notes and, and completing the first draft of The Falling Sky, which is what we're talking about today. So he did that in 6 months after extensive revisions. That this novel is his committed return to writing, and he is currently working on three additional projects, including one connected to The Falling Sky and another titled The House of Holland. So, welcome, Corky.
Hello.
All right. From here, what I say we do is give you a chance to pitch. So, we're here today to celebrate the book release of The Falling Sky. And I want to kick it over to you to just do a brief kind of pitch for this book to the audience that you think would love to read it. Let them know why they should pick this book up.
The Falling Sky is historical fiction. It's going to appeal to those that like action, adventure, and a little bit of drama. It's rooted in World War II. It actually begins before the bombing of Pearl Harbor and subsequently Manila in the Philippines. It follows Ethan. He's our main character. His family has been troubled by the Great War, and over the course of time, he saw his father get destroyed, and eventually his family. So, uh, his his mission in life was to lead a very calm life, and he's a pilot. So he gets involved with a company called Devoy Industries as an aeronautical engineer, and he believes he's going to ride out the war, designing, building things, should war come, but instead he gets dragged into it as the company starts to crumble beneath them, and they must fly to the Philippines to sort out some issues that they're unaware of. In the meantime, there's kidnappings, there's there's a lot of action concerning espionage, and it all ties into this company. Um, and he gets pulled into it, and that's the thing about the adventure itself. There's as some readers have said, there's some asides. These asides are tied to the story itself, but I think some readers will find interest in the budding love story, while others will find interest in the plight of Yako, an 8-year-old girl. Um, and then some will enjoy the espionage factor and some of the history that's involved. It's heavily researched to appeal to those that are interested in World War II itself, while also providing a civilian look at where the United States, Philippines, and all of Asia was headed very quickly. And I hope everybody enjoys it.
Awesome. Well, that's really cool. I have a lot of respect for those that dive into historical fiction because it does take a tremendous amount of research, I feel like, to create the stories within the real context of these actual historic events that took place. My grandfather was a World War II vet, so he had all kinds of stories growing up, and I know it's a very formative time in our country's history with a lot of really good potential there. So I am definitely interested. So you wrote a novella, it sounds in 2013. You had notes for this story. You set it aside, you picked it up. You said you did the first draft and then, 6 months and then you were going through the period of revisions. So tell me a little bit about the process for your writing this story.
Well, I started with a character for another book. Um, and that book, I had to set it aside back in 2013, and I ended up writing a novella instead because I was just learning to put stories together at the time. But I had researched the fall of Bataan, uh,
Okay.
which happened relatively quickly during World War II once Japan decided to attack Pearl Harbor, and they took over Asia Pacific pretty fast. They had gotten a foothold in Formosa. So, but studying that, I was interested in the stories that came from the veterans that did actually survive. And I began and as I was reading, the idea came to mind to write a novel that began before the bombing of Manila and then subsequently the invasion of Luzon, um, based around B-17 crews. And I got into the research, and there's just so much that one has to learn. And I got excited about writing, so I cut that short and ended up writing about um, this guy Frank, a character I made up, who's a naval salvage expert at the time, and that novella was a lot of fun. Uh, but I saved all the research because there's what goes into a novel such as The Falling Sky is there's cultural issues at play here. The Philippines isn't like the United States where you might have a dialect in the South and up on the East Coast, and you can't tell the difference between Wisconsin and Canada as far as the way some people speak. Everybody's cool, but everybody understands everybody. With the Philippines, there's so many different languages and cultures that were isolated, not completely, but I guess you would say, self isolating. And the fact that they're tribal. And then you've got the Spanish influence on all of them, and some other influences as well. And in the United States, at the turn of the 20th century, they took over. So all these merging influences had affected culture differently across different parts of the Philippines. So there was a good 3 or 4 months of research just into that alone. And in The Falling Sky, I feature Manabo, which is a group of people in Mindanao, a group, one of many. There are so many that are spread out throughout the islands. Just that one group is a all-day adventure in collecting just to read and understand what those people are all about. And then you don't want to you're trying not to tread on their history or their way of life. You want to do them a solid. And, even in the research, I left a lot of stuff out because uh, while we may not understand their way of doing things, it wouldn't have been appropriate to publish that kind of stuff, especially in a fictional work, But I think I brought the best of those people forward for not ever meeting any. Uh, I think I did them a solid, if that's a good way to put it. Um, and some of these characters, I have a character named Cleto that's in the book that he's he's Filipino with strong Spanish ties, and he's almost a humor add-in because he represents the short, boisterous strong man, that
Yeah.
he's got more power than he looks, and he's actually I like the character a lot, but he's also paired with another character that is just really snarky, and his name is Ainsley, and he will put a person down. He will call it as it is, and between the two, the banter is really funny. But it's one of the asides that was mentioned by one of the reviewers. The asides are not asides in the sense that these carry on into the next book, but they're important to the story because it leads to why the characters are who they are and how it all happens. Hopefully, the readers find that when they invest time in my book.
So I'm curious. You're talking a lot about how you had to invest a lot of time into the research. I'm curious as far as what that looked like. Did that look like going to the library, searching the internet? Do you have notebooks of just documents? Like, how
I
did
have,
you get
yes.
information for this?
Well, some of it is from the, especially with the Philippines, we're going through their tourism to see what they like to highlight. University of Hawaii was a big resource for me. Their online library provided maps and documents, um, even Pinterest to find old things that people held, such as train tickets.
Oh, that's
You
interesting.
won't see that in this book because it was part of the research, and it will show up in another book. But every little detail, these towns don't have the same names. These streets don't have the same names anymore. So I'm pulling up maps from the University of Hawaii, from online sources such as the U.S. archives. Those are good ones too. And I'm looking at Clark Field and different areas in the 1930s and pulling up street names because those street names changed with when the Philippines finally got their independence after World War II. They renamed a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, Let us not forget that Japan tried to rename stuff, but it didn't hold. Little details like that. I'm also looking at neighborhoods that were around in the 30s that were no longer around in the 40s, and um, you're also all these things. What used to be a trip to the library is now available online through National Archives and different colleges, even the University of Phoenix, believe it or not. So, and books, the library. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I do not remember which book it was that I checked out, but it ended up being too touristy and was not much of a help to me. But that's the library just didn't have a lot of material for that area. Some research was done through, and I can probably pull up a list at some point, but um, nonfiction stories, and a lot of that was early on, listening to the angels. Um, if you didn't ask, I would know, but they were the nurses. This nonfiction book about the nurses through the occupation of the Philippines. There are several other books that address the resistance and whatnot. Uh, but yeah, online sources are really well, but you got to pick them out. You have to be very careful because some of those sources tend to have a political leaning to them, and I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in just the facts because I'm writing fiction, and I can make up my own stuff. I don't need somebody making up their stuff for me. But
Yeah.
that was actually a lot of fun, and that's a rabbit hole.
Oh, I can imagine, especially if you're interested in the topic. You just can dive in here and just learn so much. It's like I mean, people spend lifetimes getting this kind of information and learning this kind of thing. So you did a lot of research. It sounds like, again, based on your intro, that you did a lot of this research early. When you picked the book back up again, were you doing a lot of new research? Were you having to
Yes,
refresh your memory on all this? Yeah.
yes, new research. You're right. when I picked it up again, that's where the train tickets come in that I was talking about, and little flyers and stuff. I had the core research done already for the other book, which was going to take place during the war. This one takes place before, so when I went back, I had to do new research, and
Yeah.
that's where Pinterest came in. That was actually I have I have a folder with several hundred megabytes of just random stuff that I had collected. The people that live in an area that have gone through a war, they're very proud of their history, especially when they come out the other side stronger. So, and they want to share so much. And one of my sources that is a jumping off point for research is I follow a group on Facebook that is World War II in the Philippines.
Okay.
And these people are showing their families' um, contribution to the war during and before, and some of their little stories about their family members. They're not little in the sense of these are big stories. They're
Hmm.
just short. They, you know, really good stuff. But yeah, new research. I also had to research maps again. Uh, going which it's a big deal. The story
Yeah.
itself is fictional, but you really need to, as historical fiction writer, not so much in some of the other genres, there's always that one guy. That's the word I like to use, and I almost wrote an intro in the book to that one guy. you know Here's the middle finger. Now I know I'm going to make a mistake. uh,
That wasn't invented until 1942.
Yes, yes. And I had one come up, and when I wrote the Elko Run, they actually caught an error. And I'm glad they did, but also it was so fast that they caught it. I was almost offended, and I had to sit back and sulk for a bit. And I was like, ah. And it was about caliber of bullets, and they were right
Oh,
on
yeah.
the money. That round hadn't come out for another 10 years. But it was a mistake on my end because I knew better. But I was in my mind, uh, it just came out. I was okay. That must be right. But I was happy they actually found it. That gave me a little bit of humility for the next time I jumped in, because there's always something that is either erroneous in my research, or even spell check will change stuff on me sometimes, especially
Yeah.
autocorrect if I'm typing into my phone, which I did that a lot for specific scenes. I'll just be driving down to run an audiobook, and I'll just be hitting the speak button this entire scene out while I drive to work, because it takes an hour and a half to get there. It takes an hour and a half to get back. That's plenty of time to about scenes and listen to books. I love books. Duh.
Yeah.
But the writing though is the scenes come to me when they do, and I try not to focus on the books while I'm doing other tasks, because only one thing's getting done well, and it's either the writing or it's the task I'm on. So, but I can drive blind. I won't try it, but I can drive and write as long as I got a microphone button. But just when I get to work, I'll look at what I put into that document, and it's sometimes nothing near what I thought I said. And it'll pick up stuff from the background too, and that's kind of amusing.
Yeah, that's funny. So I'm interested to know, you picked this World War II time period. Was this a previous interest that you had? What inspired the interest in this particular time period for you?
Actually, as a kid, I I remember watching the Seabees with John Wayne. It's a um, black and white. That one always comes to mind because of the jungle scenes and everything like. I started watching a documentary about the Bataan Death March, and I want to say 1980s, probably the early 1980s. Since then you really don't see a lot done on the Pacific, especially with the Philippines. 40,000 camps, and 20% came out at the end of the war. And it kind of puzzled me that there wasn't airplay for that kind of stuff. Everything was focused on Italy, France, a little bit, and a lot on Iwo Jima. And the portion start to take things back is when a lot of the movies and stories were tailored to highlight, and probably for good, because some of these movies came out in the 1940s. I didn't begin to start reading about this stuff until it was in the early 2000s. I picked up Stephen E. Ambrose's Band of Brothers, which was also made into a miniseries. And the book was really well written. I was actually quite surprised that the book is better. And in Stephen E. Ambrose's case, it was much, much better. 10 hours for this book done in movies still doesn't come close to the book as far as how these stories are laid out. And the way Stephen paints things, I can mind, and that was nonfiction. And in writing fiction, the heart of, I'm hoping this period in time and this location, and I'm hoping to see more works as well, nonfiction or fiction. A lot of, I would wager people know what War Plan Orange is, and
I don't. So there you go.
But it was carried out to the best of. But there were so many from the on the U.S. side, Philippines. You will not see the withdrawal from Luzon, Bataan Peninsula movies, because it is just one failure all the way through. And that's really a shame, because people fought and died gallantly. And we did really well. We had, I say we, that's, it was the story. It's just the result is horrifying.
Yeah.
I'm not taking a stand on it, but I would like to see more people cover that period. And
yeah, I think that makes sense. We don't want to have it lost in history, and sometimes fiction can be the bridge to get people interested in the story. So I'm interested, we've talked about your research, the technical aspects of making sure that when you have a historical fiction piece, that it's accurate, that it represents everything as it was, so that you don't have that one guy. You can find your mistakes. But let's talk a little bit about the characters, because I'm a character writer. I love to I feel like the people that you're telling the story about can really bring the reader in. They're the ones that you're going on the journey with. So what inspired your characters, and what was the process of bringing them to life and embodying them in that time period and their respective cultures?
right,
aside from research.
Ethan is the main character, and I wanted a pilot. Actually, I've never flown a plane in my life. I've been on a few, but I've never flown. I don't have a pilot's license or anything, but I am fascinated with pilots. That is, but Ethan, I wanted a pilot, and I initially wanted to build this love story and trail into the thriller aspect of a serial killer, but I scrapped the serial killer and began writing about the company in Florida where this story begins. And from there, I felt like something was missing from the story. So I kept leaning back into the research that I did about the Philippines. So very quickly, I had this character that could fly. and that had this trauma from his father's, what we now know as PTSD
Yeah.
from the First World War. Um, and I began to explore that. And then I ended up wanting to go across the globe. So it's really me taking an adventure that I want, as strangely as that sounds. And I developed this character to fit that role for me. I wanted him to be mild mannered, light, be a little humorous, and very, very smart with Ethan. You can't have a bunch of boring characters, pit him against a character named Margaret, who is the sister of the CEO of this company. Now, in the story, you find out that Ethan has met her before, because for the time period 41, she is very knows that she's take this company over while no other women are doing such things. So, very strong in the sense that she wants what when she wants it and how she wants it, because she has a plan, and she forces a few issues that shouldn't be discussed in a podcast, which kind of stresses out the main character. It scares and intrigues him at the same time. It really messes with his brain the entire story, which is out. Those two characters a central role early in the book. I felt like the story needed generations for that time period. So I story of a little girl. Now, there was always to be, and the minute I decided to go globetrotting, and that's Tashi. He's in chapter 2. He is a doctor. He's performed many experiments, war crimes, every single one of them, against Chinese, Mongolian, and Russian prisoners. But Tadashi kind of gets roped into this and suddenly realizes that this is not for me, that this is not going to end well. So he decides to the United States, but the United States and try and prevent a war. So for Tadashi to get out of Japan and into the United States State Department in the story, he decides to get a company involved that has ties with the Philippines. That can Tadashi must bring evidence of these war crimes, but as readers will learn the story, but he is a facilitator of that, and he brings his wife and daughter for good reason. And I don't want to spoil his daughter. It's just such a lovable character, and she's so fun that it's hard not to. That's what I'm hearing, and I enjoy writing it. It's to write for an 8-year-old child.
I was going to say, it takes some talent.
And yes, and her favorite book is one her father read to her that was in English, even though she's Japanese. And I like to use it for her escape, the cast is very large. I don't want to go too far on all the characters. Is Margaret, older brother, and he's the one that is, and his own for very good reasons, and that's how we know that company. And there's other cast members for this story that get deeply involved in the espionage end of it and smuggling of Tadashi and family. Things do not go well from the beginning, and they continue to not throughout the entire book until near the. There will be some satisfaction to readers. They're not action heavy. I think the readers will enjoy shifts quite often. The main character's perspective is first person. They have their own third person, and you get unique insights into these characters. And it's a lot of fun writing these characters. And
I love that. All right, so I'm interested to know, as far as your writing approach, your approach to forming this story. Did you plot everything out and then you banged out that first draft? Did you kind of let the story go where it wanted to go and then you went back and edited the snot out of it? I'm curious where you fit kind of in that planner, plotter, fly by the seat of your pants there.
I wouldn't even, it was a percent. As the characters began to, I had a general idea where I wanted to see pants the very beginning of it all the way up through no longer in the book. Early on, after I changed the direction of the, but I wrote 3 sentences when I finally figured out plot. I had my characters. And I knew the date should be in history. And that was the rest. I'll let the characters tell me what was going to happen by their personalities and the struggles that they went into, because you cannot change history changing the genre of the book, fiction to alternate history. Yeah. So there's a lot of problems. Travel from point A, different way, a lot of fun. Was trying to figure out where they needed to be on specific dates, and there is a location at the beginning of many, if not almost all of them. I skipped a few because of the location. That was quite the feat. UK 1937 model aircraft travel so far, and then it fuel and all this other stuff. I had to take that into account. I even looked up for the China Clipper, for instance, that went out of San Francisco and into the Orient, but the rate as well. About the route until I had to look at the travel time. Yes, that played a role. The travel time played a role in how I plotted. I didn't pants every chapter, the next few scenes out. So let me rewind that a little bit. I plotted the next few. Plotted this character for the next few scenes, and I would take a good hard look at where they were at and where they were going, and then I would make adjustments and I would plot further ahead on this one. And that's how I ended up with 150,000 words that had and that's where, yes, mainly pantsing to draw that out. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm curious as far as what the process was like for the revision. So you ended up with a manuscript that's obviously longer than the genre that you're writing in typically would want, and so you ended up having to make some choices and cuts. So I'm curious what was that like? The kill your darlings, if you will, of
Uh,
the editing
oh,
process
that
there.
was horrible. I reread the manual about 3 or 4 looking for the natural break, and I had at the time a specific point um, dealing with another character. Uh, he is off on his own, and the process trying to bring everybody at least a comfortable where the reader didn't feel like everything was a cliffhanger and it wasn't happening. So I read it 2 or 3 times and discovered that while the novel should end probably later than it does, when I went through that second time, I realized the ending much earlier, but I would have to after and write in a couple of new chapters and then revisit my antagonist and tighten and create a couple of new chapters for him. Mess with the storyline from the original too much, but it gave him more screen, which was actually worked out real well. It um, as a villain, and it where it is actually much better than where it ended at 150,000 words because it was too many things going on at the time. It confused the reader, and so finding that balance to where I could cut it off and end where it was, got it to where the reader could follow along. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but there was just a conclusion I came to that made it easier to cut it.
Yeah, I can believe that. So you're talking
And
about,
I'm
the
saying all
reader.
this spoilers.
No, it makes sense. So you're talking about, the readers. Did you have beta readers that were helping you to make the decisions on the cut? Were you getting feedback earlier? I'm curious
I
as far
was,
as other people
yeah,
that have been involved.
yes, I had a few beta readers that were helping me with the likability of the story. If you say, they were telling me if there was any long periods in there that was once a slog, and it's that way because I went through and found where they seemed to be irrelevant to anybody but me. It only to me than it needed to go.
Yeah.
But I have about 3, and I was constantly hitting them with a few chapters. I tried to be very nice about it and not so pushy decide where to cut it. I had to make that decision, and because I needed to offer them a for them to get their impression, and I control things too much when it comes to art or whatnot. So it's very hard for me to give up that to somebody else to let them make the decision. And fortunately, I've had some really good readers that were honest. Honest is good, reader. Honest is they all want to
There's
be
truth
very
to that.
nice. Yes,
Yeah,
and
and nice only gets you so far when you're actually trying to make hard choices and really understand what your readers in the future who buy this are going to think. Yeah.
yes.
So
I like nice, but I don't want nice when I'm editing.
for sure.
And I think they did a good job of that.
Awesome. So how long did the editing process? So you picked this back up in 2001, and now it is 2025. So that's about 4 years of work.
Yes, 4 years. Yes, picking it back up in 2021. It took me about 6 months to not, and then I played with it for another 6 months. So I went from 125,000 words to 150 in 6 months. So that's a full year writing it. And then editing, I did that for a year on and off, whips to have fun with while trying to figure out what was wrong with my story. So beginning in 2024, 2024 is when I decided to cut the book in half. And that was an epiphany. So in the meantime, but once I cut it in half, just to editing, streamlining, writing new scenes, a complete story. And half was I was able to give more time to the character more. Because when I cut it in half, I actually cut it to about 63,000 words and then added back in more hard characters. And that was nice. That was another year. The fall, it took a year.
Yeah.
So a lot of manuscripts out and back in, out and back in.
Yeah, it can be quite the process for sure. So how do you feel after this experience? Now you went from a novella, that was the first thing you've published. Now you have a full novel, it's out into the world. It seems, it's an accomplishment for sure. Most people, they start writing and they never finish. So you've officially become one of the minority percentages to be able to complete it. Is this inspirational? Do you feel like you're going to do, hopefully, I know you're working on other things, but how are you feeling about this?
I am feel like I looked up and then parachute there, that I'd worried too much. It's a big relief. Think even 2 months out that you'll never get there. Time I turned around, or one time, all my quotations at the end of a paragraph and the beginning of the paragraph where they should be, and remember, I just don't know how I missed it. Yeah, even when I sent out my soon as I hit publish on that, looked at it and I was like, oh no, first page. There's their first page. And the auto-corrected paragraph, and I was like, what to actually publish. It was going to go live. The pre were out there, the whole city, and that's when I would find. Now that it's out there, now that it's okay, I can fix it. I don't feel like I don't feel bad before, so I'm excited to actually get to work on Holland. I want to finish the very paranoid Southern Gothic work that I stopped at 5% because I had too many whips going. And I have the second book for Sky that I need to finish. So I have plenty to do. and I'm excited to get to work on at least one of those. I'll probably one at a time because I can't help it. And I'd be happy to do some reading too.
Yeah,
I'll have more time for reading.
I am interested. So I'm going to close out the interview portion of this with the last question being, you got your start into this a little later in life. Do you have advice for somebody who maybe has always wanted to write, but life has kind of kept them from doing it? Or, what would be your advice now as having gotten your published novel out there in the world to people who are aspiring to be where you are now?
I would say start. You just have to start. You have to start. If you don't, and something, if you're worried about trying to do something, that's just start. You have to start writing, and a good teacher, somebody that's willing to take a look and honest and harsh if necessary. But it's a lot of fun. Even with the criticism, it's a lot of fun. You can't go wrong. If you have a story, advice.
I love it. That's my favorite. My favorite advice is just right. You got to start with something. You can't just live in your head. So I love that. I'm going to give you an opportunity if you would like to read some portion of your book to give people a taste. It could be the first page. It could be some early thing that was really interesting to you, but just let's entice readers to check it out and see what it's about.
All right.
I'd love that.
I have, if you'll want.
Not a problem. We'll bear.
There it is. Came out today. I was able to get the actual Kindle edition. Chapter 1. Ethan, December 8th, 1941. Now, Philippine Islands. These words are long, so. The fuselage and port wing. Deafened. In one pop. Puffed smoke and whined. This passed over within 2 yards. Fixed landing gear. Insignias. Its speed twice the Lockheed Electra's. Racer zipped past the starboard side as and then two spun out of control. They propelled and fell gracefully away. Projectiles tore through the flight deck. The co-pilot seat disintegrated. Aluminum and cotton particles hung there as the Electra. The second Brucer Buffalo slipped beneath us. Both combatants banked. I couldn't focus on them. I had bigger problems. He yelled out, "Brace!" The roar of trees lying on cool earth, gaze turned bluer as the cloud sank toward me. My body ached, its movement delayed, shadowed beneath the tree. I groaned as branches clawed away the sky. Ah, yes, that. My lungs. I was hit with a sudden awareness of the consequences of remaining beneath a 60 craft. It was sinking, snapping branches, only 20 feet above Electra's path as it wrapped. The fuselage fell, the final 10 metallic crunch. The airframe creaked and groaned final breath. Had I would have been inside, taken heat from the Langley shouted. "Third plane you've lost, you no-flying bitch," in the staccato of his voice. His body from but not aircraft hitting the ground. It was my fourth unconventional landing, but Captain Langley, Ron, didn't need to know my fault, and it wasn't my fault he was either. I grunted back. "Your concern for my well-being has been noted. 4 months ago in Florida, spilling coffee in my lap would have ruined my day. Our escape from and from the war did not go as planned. I'd killed her instead of this sweltering tropical rock. I wouldn't have Margaret. Before to keep us alive." I wanted to call out to Margaret, but Ron's beet red face glared from a blown-out window. He was lashing out. More had much left to give. "Get me out!" A woman's commanding voice permeated the air as her delicate steps reverberated aluminum. "We didn't crash, Captain Langley. We were shot." It was his nurse, Camille. Decomposing leaves and damp air mingled with my sweat. There was no metallic scent of blood. All too familiar with as soon as my feet hit Philippine soil. I leaned against the tree, sickening and I shouted back, "Anyone hurt?" My consciousness faded, tilted the world on it, sounded loudly. "No new injuries." The pressure on my head swelled, and I opened my stinging eyes to see Camille kneeling over me. "You're back. Take this. Last one," Camille demanded, jabbing my morphine won't last long. Close your eyes. Something metal from the side of my thigh. There was no blood, not that I could see. Shivering in the damp night, clouds and trees, giving the illusion. The pain in my head was back, and thirst scratched at my throat behind parched tongue, feeling around to get a sense of where I was. Langley was groaning beside me. They'd moved him out of the plane. "Shh, she's not." Her trembling hand pressed against me. "There was another crash an hour ago. We're not alone." Gunshots cracked in the distance, coming from many. Another hollow crack, sharper, closer. My low voice was hoarse. Camille handed me a nearly empty canteen. "We can't stay here. We must move now." That was chapter 1.
I love it. Thank you for reading that for us. All right. So with that, I know you have some work in progress that you're going to be moving on to. I am so happy that you were able to spend this time and I was able to offer you your first interview and celebrate this book coming out. It sounds fantastic, especially, so again, if you're a historical fiction buff, if you love World War II, I definitely say check it out. Give you a chance to learn something about the Philippines, which again, yeah, it's definitely a piece of the history that I don't think we talk that much about. And I can tell that you put a lot of love and passion into this. So thank you. Is there anything that you want to leave as a parting remark? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and kick out.
Check out my book. It is, if you have, you can read it for free. Right now, the print version is quite pricey, but it is large. So I do hope to get a small cover as well pretty soon. So thank you. This was a lot of fun.
I'm glad to have you. So thank you, everybody who has watched and commented. I